morning. I'm presenting my study on substance abuse in nursing and the public's perception on this problem. I did research and found that this is happening all around. There's been much research on it, in fact, and patients are not receiving the drugs that they need, and they are being taken care of by impaired nurses. And there is a public perception regarding this, and it seems that there are a lot of myths that have gone around, and Thomas and Celia try to dispel those myths, but there have been outbreaks within hospitals, and from nurses giving patients things like Hep C, and causing huge outbreaks within the hospital. And I just kind of wanted to get the public's perception of how these nurses should be treated after, we find out that they've been abusing substances, and how they would feel returning the nurse back to work, and then how they would feel taking care of somebody's loved one after the fact. So these models here, they show, first of all, this is just whether they were medical field or not. I really wanted to make sure that I was getting the public's opinion, and it turned out that more people were indeed public, had never worked in the medical field before, so that was great. That was exactly what I wanted. And then these figures right here show the way the disease model thinkers viewed each of the questions that I asked at the very end, about whether they would allow the nurse to return to work, about whether they would allow the nurse to care for their loved one, or and also about whether they would want any disciplinary action to be carried out towards the nurse for this substance abuse. To actually carry out the statistical analysis, I did a chi-square test. I had to basically condense the two variables. The meat of the survey was the addiction belief scale, which is what classified people as either disease or free will thinkers. And so I basically condensed those depending on their responses to those questions, and use those as two of the variables, and use that against the last four questions of my survey, which were the would you like disciplinary action to be taken against the nurse? Would you allow the nurse to return to work? Would you allow the nurse to care for your loved one? And have you ever worked in the medical field? And it turned out that most people were actually disease thinkers. They believed that substance abuse is in fact a disease, which was kind of cool, and they didn't want any disciplinary action to be taken against the nurse. You can see all of that in the results section. So it actually turned out that two of my hypotheses, the null hypothesis, was accepted. I was incorrect in my hypothesis. It was the opposite way. So people who believed that it was a disease were more likely to allow a nurse to return back to work. And all in all, it ended up being a really neat study. It turned out that what I thought was going to be the results were kind of the opposite. And it was nice to see that people believe that it is something that can be fixed, and that disciplinary action does not need to be taken. I think it's a study that we could continue to do more on. My participants, I could have used more. I wish my sample size was bigger, but of course, I'm sure most of us do. I think that I probably could have asked a few more questions to maybe get a broader idea of exactly how far their limitations are as to what they would allow a nurse to do or not do, or something like that. But all in all, it ended up being pretty good.